Hey, welcome to our VoxConversation. I'm Matt Popovitz, and today I'm excited to introduce you to singer and songwriter, hymn writer, and producer, Sandra McCracken. Sandra, welcome to VoxCon.
Thank you so much. It's good to be with you across the miles.
And we're so glad that you can join us. And for those watching, if you're not familiar with VoxCon, if you just stumbled across this conversation, VoxCon exists to help creatives and communicators thrive in their calling by helping them unlock their creativity and become better communicators. Because ultimately what we believe is that when you thrive in your calling, not only do you experience more joy, but the world becomes a better place. And the way in which we help you do that is by introducing you to people that we believe are thriving in their calling and let them serve as inspiration for you. And that's what today's VoxConversation with Sandra McCracken is all about. We can't wait for you to get to know her. So Sandra, let's start here. How did you get started as a singer and songwriter, and how would you then describe the work that you do today?
Good question. It's one of those questions that's hard to answer because there are so many ways you could answer it. I probably would say my start in music was a way at home as a kid to get out of doing chores. Like I would go to the piano and I was rewarded because the family enjoyed hearing me play. And so I would spend a lot of hours just with music, and music became both like a devotional outlet and a creative outlet. I loved to learn songs, show tunes, whatever I could get my hands on or my ears in front of. So, and then I think from there, I didn't really imagine that was going to be a career in music. I didn't have ambition to be a performer or to be in front of everybody, but I loved it and found that as a place of real like core expression. So the songwriting, journaling, writing part was really just part of my own development through adolescence and then into college. And then once I left college, I realized I had spent a lot of hours doing that, and then it really kind of launched me into an independent career. So from that point, it was a few small things like starting a separate bank account and taking my guitar in the back seat of the car and playing any clubs or bookstores or venues that I could find that would have me and play. Usually at that time it was like 3 hours of cover songs, and that, and that was great. Just trying to play until your fingers can't play anymore. And then from there it just became more and more like a matter of finding my own voice and my own footing. And so I just woke up one day and I've been doing this for a really long time. And so it feels like a real gift to be able to look back and see that and just to say like, man, I don't exactly know how we got here, but it was one small step in front of another.
So now there's more than you're doing than songwriting and performing. You're a producer as well, and you write for other artists too, right?
Yeah, I do. I mean, it's all kind of coming out of that same practice of just writing and trying to be faithful to the work. But I love collaboration, and that may come up more as we talk. I think working with other people really brings out new parts of the inspired work, and then you end up with something that has more dimension. It has maybe things you had within you that you didn't know were there. So writing with other people and producing things that are collaborative, both on a Sunday, if I were to lead a worship band, or if I were to produce an album with other artists, or to do things that are collaborative in terms of writing, all that stuff is really life-giving for me too.
Is that something that you've been blessed to appreciate from the very beginning, or is the power of collaboration something that you learned later on, like as you moved down the road of this profession?
That's a good question. I think it came natural to me because I'm part of a big family. So collaboration as a family, even though it wasn't musical, was just was a place that felt comfortable to me. Being the youngest child, it was like everybody has opinions, lots of strong personalities in my family. And so seeing, the beauty, like seeing something from 5 different perspectives, I think was a gift of my own upbringing that I don't know. I think in the early years of writing, I was pretty focused on my own experience and my first songs I wrote sitting in English class, and they were just basically songs about my feelings, as like, a young girl. And I think that was all important. I mean, it feels funny to remember that now, but how meaningful it is to say this is how we progress through. And, like writers, like Richard Rohr and Ruhlhauser, they talk about like the first half of life where you take in all of this, you're sort of absorbing everything. And then the second half of life, you begin to give it back to the people around you. So I think maybe there has been a more recent pivot where I have recognized that collaboration is really the way forward. It is the way to more wholeness and growth as a person, rather than just being kind of preoccupied with myself. Should make that personal.
Now, as you and I have this conversation, there is a lot of uncertainty and anxiety in the world. Mm-hmm. And especially for artists who make their living performing and communicating in front of crowds. The global pandemic has obviously changed that for everyone. How has this current season of anxiety and uncertainty, how has that affected your creative process?
It's funny. Last year, I had sketched out some things in a notebook about wanting to make an album, my next project, and had a few songs already written, and then I wanted to kind of cast vision for what that would be. And it was a collection of songs about anxiety, like pushing back against anxiety. And not knowing what 2020 would be like. And I live in East Nashville. We had this tornado early in the year, and then the pandemic begins, just right on the heels. And it was also jarring, and recognizing that what I had set forward to do creatively really came to life and became almost electrified in a way. It was like, okay, you got to pay attention. These songs matter. And even in saying that, I think it has been harder to produce creative work during this time when I also am afraid. It's like if you're kind of in a fog of your own fear, it makes it hard to be creative, and that's okay. And the songs will emerge, or the creative work will emerge after that, but you really can't rush it. So it has both. I think this moment that we're in has both affirmed the work and also made the work slower and more difficult in a sense. Like it's required some tenacity I didn't expect.
Yeah, I would imagine. What advice might you give to another creative or communicator, or really a leader of any kind, who might feel stuck in this moment? Any advice you might give to someone who has to create in this climate?
Yeah, I think about when I feel stuck, or when I think about that kind of that posture. I think about the seasons and natural things. Like if you go outside, or if you pay attention to the seasons around you, just literally right out the window. The spring emerging. I think it's a reminder that winter happens, that it is not the end of the story, that there is something new emerging, that there is life after death. There is like this cycle that is counterintuitive. Like we resist, that seed going into the ground. We're like, no, I don't. I just want this beautiful vase full of flowers. It's like, well, you can't have that unless you have the slow, quiet ground that can nourish the seed, that takes time for that to grow. And I just think the patience required is like a way, meditating on that in creation is a way of being kind to ourselves and being patient with ourselves when things feel like they're not moving and like we're stuck. And also just knowing we all feel it and we all go through those seasons. So if that makes sense, I think looking to creation and being kind and patient with ourselves as we have this desire to produce more fruit.
Yeah, I think that's perfect, because, well, first of all, I love that you said we should be kind to ourselves as creative people, as communicators, as leaders. I love that. I think there's a lack of empathy for your own self, and the fact that you're going through something, you're grieving something, and you get to be human and feel things and deal with things, right? But I love the idea of tying our calling and our creativity to the seasons, because things that are alive go through seasons. And if our creativity and our vocation and calling is a living thing too, then it's allowed to go through seasons as well, right? Like we should give
Yeah.
ourselves permission to go through seasons of great life. It can't be perpetual springtime.
Yeah.
There needs to be seasons where the land lays fallow for a little bit so it can produce something later on, perhaps, right?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's so clear. And I need those reminders too. I think just to have said that, I think I struggle with that. In times when I haven't written for a while, I think, oh my gosh, I'm never gonna write anything again. And I think just hearing from each other that is normal and that's part of it is why we need community as artists, and to not just be. I mean, we definitely need people that are not in the same creative space to speak into our lives, and we also need other creatives to just like live in that kind of quirky self-doubt that we sometimes enjoy.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, we would love if you would share some of your creations with us, if you would sing for us.
Yeah.
And rumor has it that you're willing to do that. So what might this first song be?
I would love to. This is a song called "We Will Feast," and it is "We Will Feast in the House of Zion" is the full title. But it is a song that's somewhat dreamlike, and in that metaphor, in that image of like this table, we're going to gather around a table. There's a promise, and there is a thread that pulls us through the season we're in now, and hoping for the next one. So, thank you. All right, here goes.
Andrew, that was fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you. My pleasure.
And just full disclosure, that's one of my favorite songs in the world. So this was a personal pleasure for me to get to hear you sing that in this conversation. So Sandra, what resources do you draw from for strength as you face the challenges that come with your calling? You know, being an independent artist and creative and performer has very unique challenges, and not insignificant ones. So, like, what resources do you draw from to give you strength and to keep you going and to remain clear about your calling and your purpose?
That's a great question. I think it's renewal has different emphasis. Like, there are things I've paid more attention to over the years. One thing I think I would say that is important for me is like staying present, like in my own body. So like running and physically, like getting out and doing things that are not just in my creative headspace actually help me to feel clear when I sit down and put pen to paper. So, and it's one that I didn't notice for a long time. I didn't realize. My dad's a cross country coach growing up, and I remember like I hated to run. I did, it was like, you know how that is. It's like if it's the obvious thing your dad wants you to do, you're like, I don't want to do that right now. But now I appreciate it so much that when I get out and go for a run, and then I come back in, man, there's like breath in my lungs, and I feel ready to take on the challenges that may face me creatively when I pick up my guitar or try to express how I feel. I don't know. So I would say that as an encouragement is for a lot of years I didn't pay attention to that, and now I realize how important it is.
So here in the VoxCon community, we have an appreciation for the Enneagram, which I think you're familiar with. You mentioned Richard Rohr, and I've heard you on some other podcasts, and you are, if I'm not mistaken, an Enneagram 4, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So do you think as an Enneagram 4, which if people don't know, that's sometimes called the romantic, a lot of artists are Enneagram 4s. They feel their feelings, right? Yeah. Do you feel like that need to be present in your body and perhaps have some physical exertion, it kind of serves to pull you out of that maybe emotional space that you might otherwise get maybe like lost in?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great thing to bring up, because for all of us, I think you can be any number on the Enneagram and be an artist, a fruitful artist. And so that is, it's such an important tool. Like being able to think about and analyze these attributes of personality is one way that you can tune into like, what is your point of balance? So if my point of balance is that I need to be physically present, for somebody else, like if you are, what would be like another good example? Like, I don't know the Enneagram enough to be able to speak into that, but to say like if you're a 3 and you love to kind of keep busy and keep moving, okay, you're a 3, right? Sorry, I didn't know that. But I wonder, what's the counter for you? Is it like finding contemplative space or meditation, or is it like kind of that opposite thing?
It's exactly as you said. For me, I often, because I'm so focused on achieving and performing and doing, there's very little in my heart, mind, and my life that makes space to recognize at all what I'm thinking or what I'm feeling. Yeah. And so for me, I'm exerting all the time. I have to be really, really intentional about sitting down either by myself or with someone who's more intuitive than me and figure out what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling. Yeah. And very often I'll have to have a conversation and someone I love will have to say, Matt, you're grieving, or Matt, you are tired and you don't know it. And I've just not spent enough time in my own heart and mind to recognize any of those things. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's so good. And I think sometimes I have some friends that really don't like the Enneagram because they feel like it boxes you into this particular thing that you have to be. And I will say, just understanding those basic, just the wirings that we have is like so helpful in just saying, okay, what is the direction of growth? And it doesn't mean you're boxed in. It doesn't mean you have to only be, like, I don't have to be introspective all the time. And that's a really good news. So understanding my number and how that works itself out helps me to grow toward being more concrete and more like action oriented and whatever the balance is. And for you, it's like it gives you this like set of coordinates of moving toward growth. And I think that's it's a great thing to mention hand in hand with creative work, because the more we understand ourselves and how we're wired, the more we can steward it well, steward the resources that we have naturally.
Yeah. Speaking of being a good steward, one question I have for you is centers around the idea of maintaining proper balance in your life. For many artists and creatives, a lot of the more typical boundaries around work simply don't apply. Like the 9 to 5 kind of thing. Yeah. So how do you work to maintain some balance in your life so that you have space for other things apart from your profession that matter?
Oh, that's a good reminder for me that I'm always needing to revisit that question. And balance. Right now, I feel like I'm so surrounded with this quarantine life, being kind of in this space. And it's hard to imagine balance the way that I experienced it when my kids were in school and there were natural rhythms. Just yesterday, I was thinking, man, it's been a long time since I had like real solitude and real time for that kind of contemplation. And yet I thought about you think about these like stories in the Bible, like think about Jonah being in the belly of a whale for 3 days. And it's like, he probably didn't feel a whole lot of spiritual renewal during that time. He was just trying to survive, and yet if you look at that, as we look back at that picture, it's like, of course, like God is with him in this place that felt like completely confusing and dark. He doesn't know which side is north. And so there's a passivity to that stage that he was in. And yet it literally propelled him into whatever was next for him and whatever God was going to do in his life. So I guess there's like this sense that balance feels sometimes like right now, balance feels like I'm in the belly of a whale a little bit, and not in some dramatic way. I'm not trying to overstate it, but as an illustration of basically saying that's okay. And yet, we will find those rhythms again, those footsteps on the sand, like walking ourselves forward into the next steps. But sometimes balance feels elusive and maybe like not the thing to achieve.
You are preaching to the choir with that, because again, as a person who's so oriented around achievement and performance, for me often, I don't know if this is true for you, but it sounds like it. For me, often not doing can feel like dying, right? And so like, because so much of who I am is centered around producing things for the world. Yeah. And yet I know, like in my heart and mind, like the need to retreat is necessary. But for me, it's often not something I get to do. It's something I simply have to do in order to be able to still give to the world.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. We need to hear that from each other. I think it's good to hear you say that, because it's and I think in general, regardless of your Enneagram number, I think we are in a society that just puts such a high value on productivity. So, it's like we don't know how to take a day off. We have a hard time. It takes me 3 days to actually settle into a vacation because I don't know how to do that very well. But the more we live into that, the more it's like the crop, the season rotation, the more we can actually bear fruit when it's time to bear fruit, if we've given it some space and rest.
I think in this moment that we find ourselves in as a global community, really with the pandemic, is kind of a global timeout. It's kind of a moment where the whole world is, for a short season, kind of in the belly of the whale, right? Yeah. And we're all, for the most part, still kind of staying at home. We have these boundaries around us, and as I said earlier, it's a time of anxiety and uncertainty for so many people. Mm-hmm. A question I have for you, Sandra, is what is it that the world in a moment like this needs the most from artists? Well, what's the unique contribution of artistic people in a time like this?
Recently, I heard Mako Fujimura, who's a painter and just an exceptional human being, but he was talking at the very beginning of this pandemic on he has like a YouTube channel and just kind of a blog, but he's in his painting studio with these beautiful pieces, and he's talking about the process and he speaks directly to artists, and it was really encouragement to me to hear him say, hey, in the first couple of weeks of this, he was like, this is so important time. This time is so important for you as artists to be paying attention, to be bringing forward art, to be just literally watching. And like you said, like the whole world is in the belly of the whale in this way that is so communal and so strangely communal. the globalization of our world is part of that. And then we find ourselves in this moment where we have communication with other people around the world, and we're all kind of in this uncertainty together. And so I think it's a unique moment, and that the more we can write or translate our personal experience, like the more specific we are about how to convey that personal experience, the more universal it is received. So I think that's what's like kind of the secret aspect of making art during a time of crisis, is like, you think you're making something that no one's going to understand, and we get it, and you're not alone. And I think it is both healing and good for the one putting that art forward, and for the people that will receive it.
Well, we would love to hear another song from you, Sandra, if you'd be so kind. What do you have for us?
Yes. Okay, this is a new one. I have a new project coming out in October called Patient Kingdom. And this is a song I wrote with a friend, Phil Madeira. And it's a gospel song of sorts, but it lives in that place of tension. So it's a good one for it was a surprise, like writing this in the middle of this season, and then as all this is unfolding day after day, it's been one that's given me some space to ask the questions. And it's not doesn't answer all the questions, but it just kind of holds the space. So it's called You Are the Word. Pressure is building like stones on my chest. You said you would fling them far as east is from west. Tangled up in the garden, hidden in shame. You said you'd be with me in all of this pain. Broken, buried, raised. I will give you praise. And you gave me your word. You gave me your word. You are the word. I've come to know heartache, maybe less than I should. But you said you'd make all of this work for my good. In triumph or ashes, in all the extremes, you said you'd gather me under your wings. Broken, buried, raised. I will give you praise. You gave me your word. You gave me your word. You are the word. Ooh. Nations will crumble, kingdoms will fall. You said trust the one who is holding it all. Your word is a lantern, a fire and a stream. You gave me your light, show your mercy to me. Broken, buried, raised. I will give you praise. You gave me your word. You
Sandra, that's incredible. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Thank you so much, Matt.
So Sandra, a lot of us, we have on our teams, we have creative people. And yet sometimes it can be difficult for us to know how best to steward them, how to love and care for them, and draw the best out of them on our teams. What advice would you give to someone who has some really thoughtful, creative people on their team for just loving them well?
I mean, it's probably just good overall relationship stuff, like good communication, like being thoughtful and intentional about what we say. I think living in close proximity with my own family, I realize like in the course of an afternoon how many things I don't actually say clearly, and how much that would help if you just like take the time to say it clearly and to say back, the whole mirroring thing. And when you're collaborating or when you're in a team, I think that communication is just so central to having everything gel and work well together. So I think the other part is I listened to an On Being a few years ago with Yo-Yo Ma, and he was talking about hospitality, and he was talking about just in such a surprising way, he spoke about it in the context of performance. So to go up and play a performance or to be in front of a room, and that he considers him the host of the room where he is like inviting everybody to be part of what he's doing. So especially if you're in a position of leadership, that leadership would feel like hospitality, to where you are saying like, I want to, like, somebody's got to have the final word. I get that. That's why you have somebody in charge. But that everybody would bring the fruitfulness that makes them, like unfiltered ideas. More ideas equals better ideas, always, And there's no stupid ideas. So welcoming people with that spirit of hospitality in collaboration can really provide some like exciting results.
I love that. I've never heard that before, of leadership as hospitality. And then I almost heard you describe you're hosting a potluck of what everybody else brings to the table, but then you're also kind of curating that whole experience for everybody else and making it safe to bring that to the table, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's sort of a dance between, I think good leadership is like, can take like almost an invisible kind of humble seat. And that, that can be problematic. Obviously, all kinds of, collaboration is hard, but I do think that that's what I would aim for, is for everybody to bring something to that buffet, and then for one person to really orchestrate and oversee how it's all laid out, and that, that could be, quite a feast.
Sandra, what are you working on now? What are you planning for the future? Do you care to share?
I'm working on some more long form writing, which is exciting and something kind of new for me. And then so basically working on a book that I hope to finish by the end of the year. Just a lot of I'm approaching it just as a songwriter, and just what does it mean to bring these ideas into a longer form. And then the other thing is just finishing an album that's coming out in October called Patient Kingdom. And this one's kind of been a journey, because we didn't really get to record in the studio the way we expected to with the pandemic. So we've been recording long distance, and that has brought some new challenges and some new really cool things that have emerged out of it. So that one, so the drummer Anthony is in Ohio, and Jay is in New York, and Tyler is in California, and Ben is another friend here in Nashville. So we've all kind of pulled these different instruments together across the miles, and I'm really excited about it. So,
and it seems like it kind of serendipitously fits with what sounds like the theme of the project, right?
Yes. So Patient Kingdom was a song that was we had, more songs than we knew we were going to record. And that was one that brought itself up to the front as all this stuff emerged. It was like, oh, well, there's the title. But this is the one I mentioned before, that's songs that combat anxiety. And fighting against anxiety, as it turns out, is a slow, patient, careful work. And it's about, life coming after that seed falls to the ground, and it keeps happening, and we just keep resisting it, but it keeps happening, and I'm really thankful it does.
Yeah. Well, what a timely project that is. Sandra, where can people go to keep up with you and all that you're doing?
Probably best place would be, I mean, I'm on the socials, but I would just say like the website should have a mailing list sign up on sandramccracken.com, and then, yeah, on Instagram and Facebook as well. I'll be around.
Fantastic. We can't wait to see all that you continue to create. Sandra, thank you so much for taking time to be with us here for this Vox conversation, and we hope to get to chat with you sometime again in the future.
Thank you so much, Matt. It's been great being on VoxCon. It's like, I feel like such a synergy of what you guys are about, and glad to be part.
Thank you, Sandra, and thank you to all of you who are watching. Thank you for tuning in. Stay tuned for more Vox conversations coming up. And in the meantime, remember, our encouragement is that you would be you and be heard. Until next time, friends.
Yeah.
I was trying not to fanboy, because I love her music so much.
You did well.
I knew I was on camera the whole time, and I'm like, oh, that first tune, I like wanted to sing along so bad. We will feast in the house of Zion. We will sing with our hearts restored.